I'd like to introduce you to some stellar role models, women who by any definition have had a successful career. I'm sure we'll hear from them today that every decision they've made hasn't been the best, and that every job they've had along the way wasn't necessarily a perfect fit, because everybody has their peaks and valleys. So they're here this morning, though, to share with you their candid insights on leadership, and especially this year, leadership in a challenging time, because it's been a tough year, as everybody can attest to. And they've also built legacies along the way, so I hope they'll share with you their experiences, what they're hoping that legacy will be, and of course, any regrets they have over the course of that career, which I'm sure they're very few. We're so glad you're here with us again for the Forté's Dialogue with Leadership and to meet these amazing women. Today, we have with us Liz Smith, who's the president of Avon Products and one of Fortune's 50 most powerful women in business. Also, Cece Sutton, who's the president of retail banking for Morgan Stanley, and also one of Fortune's 50 most powerful women in business. So we have 2 of 50 today here with us, so we're excited about that. And also, leading our panel, the woman who created Fortune's most powerful women in business, Patti Sellers from Fortune, who's their editor-at-large. So join me in welcoming these great women today to share with us their experiences.
Hello, Cece and Liz.
Hello.
Nice to see you. I'll just give you a little bit of background. I've been at Fortune for 25 years. We started this Most Powerful Women brand, as we call it now. It's now the second biggest brand after the Fortune 500. And we do it every fall. We started it 10 years ago, 11 years ago, 1998. And it's become, much bigger and more watched than we ever imagined. And through that, and an event we have every year called the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit, I've come to know Liz and Cece, and was thrilled when I heard that they were the 2 women we'd be talking to. I've done this, this Forté Foundation event. I think this is my 3rd or 4th year, and I always enjoy it. And to me, the best thing about being involved in this Fortune Most Powerful Women franchise is inspiring young women. And when I hear that, young women, business school students, women starting out in their careers, watch this, see the women we write about as role models, that's the best return on our investment that in my mind, we can possibly get. So thank you for all being here. So very basic question that I'm going to start out with. What is your story? Just give us in a nutshell the story of your career.
Okay, I was with one company for 31 years, and that was Wachovia Corporation. And I started there candidly, not knowing what in the world I was doing there, except I wanted a great job at a bank, and I did a little bit of everything. And when I left Wachovia, I was running the retail and small business bank for Wachovia.
And you started as a clerk, right?
I started as a file clerk. Like I said, I was schooled and my first job and worked my way through the organization. I had a great mentor, a lady who was way ahead of her time. She's now retired, still a mentor. And she sponsored me into the branch management training program many, many years ago. So I was a branch manager, area manager, regional manager. Then I got in the wholesale side of the business, ran the state of South Carolina. Then I had a job at the corporate office. Then I ran retail. And I ran retail for the last really 8 or 9 years at Wachovia. So definitely saw a lot of change in the industry over that whole span of the career. And certainly the last 12 months have been quite incredible. But I had a great opportunity in the latter part of last year to join Morgan Stanley and to start a business for Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley today has 18,500 financial advisors through the Smith Barney Morgan Stanley joint venture. And so we have a great investment platform, but we don't have a bank, and we really need to be able to provide our 6 million clients everything that a real wealth management firm should be providing. So I'm there to help them out the other side of that equation.
Okay. I'm going to go back. We'll go back later to that big step you took when you decided to leave Wachovia and go to Morgan Stanley, but we'll hold off on that. Liz, what's your story?
What's my story? I'm still trying to figure that out, Patty. But in all seriousness, I would say, one of the things that I'm always blown away by when I hear other people's stories, and so many of them had the game plan and the path, and they knew what they wanted to do, and I wasn't like that at all. So my story was I thought I was going to get a PhD in English and
We went to the same school. We didn't know each other. 2 years apart, University of Virginia.
I think you were on the lawn and got all those awards, and I was, I was living off campus at the time. But in all seriousness, I thought I wanted to be a PhD, and I realized, I got to make some money first, and so I applied without really knowing what it was to Morgan Stanley's Management Information System. Okay, so this is an English major. I had no business applying. I had no business being accepted, so I blame them as much as myself. But I started there, and I then got a job in the front office in business analysis and investment banking at Payne Weber, and I realized, wow, I really love the business world and the business environment, and the PhD was shelved, and I decided to go back and get an MBA, but what I really loved was marketing and the consumer aspects, and so I also wanted to someday run my own business, and figured the best way to get to that is to figure out how to run a business. So a very wise professor said you should go into brand management, and I went to Kraft because I knew it was a great training ground, and I thought really that I would be there, honestly, 3 or 4 years, and then I was going to start the next Microsoft, the next HP, the next, and as it turned out, I stayed 14 years, and they were incredible years, and I felt like every time I felt that I started to plateau in my learning, some new extraordinary opportunity would come up that I was growing. And so while I never left to start my own company, I really had a chance to learn how to operate and drive different businesses at Kraft, and spent 14 years there. And really, I think of it as I grew up there. I really grew up there, and I had some, like you, Cece, I had some amazing mentors. And I think that's what this program's about as well.
One was Irene Rosenfeld.
One was Irene Rosenfeld,
Yeah, right.
and I have a list of, and I want to, talk about that more, mentors who took an interest in me and developed me. Another incredible mentor, and you'll see a theme of not any big grand game plan. My older son started kindergarten in New York, and there was another mother in the class who I really admired from afar. Her name was Andrea Jung, and she had just done amazing things at Avon, and I thought, wow, she's amazing. She's done great things. And we started a dialogue over, did you finish the turkey for the turkey trot next week? We also started a dialogue about business. And of course, I knew Andrea and had been a fan of the work, but honestly, as we talked about it, the inspiration and the passion and the mission of Avon just won me over. And I literally, not the brightest move on paper, because it was just moving over to Avon at the time in a staff job, which I had never done. It was just an invitation from Andrea to help her come over and transform the company.
It was what, like head of brand?
We created this title together, on a little, what do you want your title? Brand president, we decided. Brand president. So that sounded good.
And what
Thank
did
you
that
very
mean?
much.
Do you know what that meant?
4.5 years later, I did. No, of course I did. What it meant was, and I don't want to take all the time, Andrea knew what had made the company successful from 2000 to 2004. It was going to be a different skill set in the year to come. And we really needed to become a matrix, okay, and become a truly global, connected company. And so I was in charge of the end-to-end marketing, R&D, strategy at the center, and it quickly evolved from there.
This is really interesting, that you walked into Avon in a position that was created for you. You walked into Morgan Stanley in a position that was created for you. There's a lot of risk in that. And I saw this blog called Postcards, which you can find if you go to www.fortune.com/postcards. There's a lot about women, prominent women in, I mention Avon a lot. You probably noticed that. Yeah. But anyway, I wrote last week about a woman named Jerry Elliott, who was one of the top women at Microsoft, left in January, had run an $8 billion business for Microsoft, had been at IBM and Microsoft her entire career. She took a job last week with Juniper Networks, with a guy who she had grown up with at IBM and Microsoft. He created a position for her. And it just strikes me, listening to you and talking to Jerry last week, that one of the things I talk about when I talk to young people or old people about careers, so many of the very successful people I've met do not take the job for the title or the pay, the number one priority is who's hiring me and who I'm going to work with. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I mean, that really resonates with me and my decision when I left Wachovia. You know, it was a lot about I spent some time with John Mack and James Gorman, but John just had this vision and this belief in what we could do if we expanded the business. And it was, you know, and even when I was hired to do it's even changed in 6 months because the environment in the financial services industry just hasn't quite settled down yet. And so I think part of it is being flexible, feeling comfortable about not only who you're working for, but the firm you're working for, understanding that they have confidence in you and what you can bring to the firm, and then giving you some freedom to shape the outcome. So we were hired to do one thing. I was hired to do one thing, and frankly that shifted some because the environment's changed. And I'm really excited about where we're taking it, but I had, and then they're being very supportive of that. So a lot of it was the individual, the institution, the company I was joining, the belief that I could make a difference, and not being totally clear day one when I took the job. I mean, I had a vision of it, but not totally clear if that would be how it would play out.
Does this global crisis change the kind of people you look to hire and promote? Does it change the most important trait that is needed to succeed in these jobs?
Oh, I think absolutely. And having talked to a lot of young women and young men coming up and through the career, and I guess I would say, I don't know that it's changed, but it's brought to the forefront and shuffled the priorities. And I would tell you that what I think is one of the most important things, and I personally have had to change, is, you know, we're all taught that great leaders set strategy, an implementation plan, and they send everybody off marching. And I will tell you that right now, nothing is more important than a nimble, agile leader who is comfortable with ambiguity. And the people that will succeed in this world going forward, because let's face it, the projectable times are over for a while, and it's going to be a bumpy, fascinating ride. And you've got to have people that are nimble and agile in their thinking, who are to some degree comfortable making it up as they go along and figuring it out as they go along. And so I really look for people who can handle change, who can handle the curveballs, who take a view of the world right now less about the classic strategic planning as the scenario planning. The if this, then that. If this, then that. And I really think it's that nimble, agile approach and understanding that you can't possibly have it all figured out and being open to that, because the IMF doesn't have it all figured out, right? They've revised the global GDP rates numerous, you know this better than I do, numerous times in the last X amount. So what you need are agile leaders, agile thinkers, people that are comfortable with ambiguity, okay, and are comfortable saying, I don't have the answers, and together we're going to partner and figure it out as we go along. I think it's a very, I think it is the skill. I also look for, right now, people that can communicate and inspire. That's always important in leadership, but now more than ever, because you have to communicate, and be completely transparent and take people along on the journey and own that, yeah, this is uncharted territories, but here's where we're going. So I think that combination between being incredibly nimble, agile, and a great communicator is really critical.
You know,
going forward.
I agree totally. The only thing I'd add, because I think that was right on, is because of the observation I have about where we've been and where we're going, and just in terms of business, you got to know the business, and I mean be in the weeds, and really understand what's going on. And when I think about the areas where there have been crises, people are too far removed and staying too high level. And I think the people I've seen be very, very successful are great operators. They understand the business, they're nimble, they're everything that was said, but they also get in the weeds and understand the business. And I think that's going to be continue to be incredibly important.
Are you hiring different kinds of people, though, than you did at Wachovia? I mean, you're building a business from scratch now. Is it a different kind of manager and executive?
I think, you know, you have to understand exactly what you're hiring for, and There's some people you would hire for a skill that's very similar, because if it's a product management role and you might have some character traits you're going to look for that are different, that align with what Liz just outlined, but you want some of the skill that's perhaps very similar to have those experiences. And there are other roles, frankly, that I would hire somewhat differently, and that is being able to know that who you're bringing in can be comfortable that the situation could change, because we still haven't settled down yet. We still have a ways to go, and people have to be willing to morph with the organization and where it's headed, and not come in thinking, this is my job, I'm comfortable in that job, and this is what I want to do. Because if that's where I have, I probably not going to hire them, because I can't be sure that 6 months from now that's exactly the job.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's so interesting to me, too, that both of you, I mean, you actually were headed when you were very, very young, 30-some years ago, to running your father's heating and air conditioning business. And Liz, you wanted to start a company, the next Microsoft, and you're both actually in big Fortune 500 companies in fairly entrepreneurial environments. I mean, Liz, you work with entrepreneurs around the world, and Cece, you're building a business within a big company. So that's very interesting. It shows that you can chart those paths inside Fortune 500 companies. Who has questions? There's one, like, literally the furthest seat away from us. Are there mics or not? No?
My name's Jennifer. I'm class of 2010 at Kellogg. So I'm halfway through.
Why don't you come over to the mics or yeah.
Hi. Okay.
Thanks.
My name's Jennifer. I'm class of 2010 at Kellogg, so I'm halfway through with my MBA. And I'm sponsored, so I kind of have a safe corporate job to go back to after school next year, but I really like to start my own company. So my question is for Liz. I'm afraid, if I go back to the corporate world, will I ever be able to get out and actually go to start my own company? Do I just go for the risky option now, or do I take the safe route and go back to the corporate world? Do you think you made the right decision? Do you think you'll ever leave?
Well, I'm going to answer for me, because I honestly believe that there's so many, to Patty's point, there's so many different paths to that, right? You have the Facebook story where it clearly didn't need to go into a big corporate world. But I will tell you, honestly, that it was really the right decision for me, okay? Because I went to Stanford, where at the time, it was very uncool to say that you weren't leaving to start your own company. Okay, so it was a little bit like, you're going to a Fortune 500, really? I remember somebody saying to me, why would you want to miss the second industrial revolution? That's a hard thing to answer. It's like, I'm going into packaged goods, and you're kind of, but I want to get trained. But I really did need to understand, what does it mean? Exactly what Cece said. What does it mean to operate a business? What does it mean to be in the engine room, getting your hands dirty? And I will tell you, I got the most incredible training and mentoring. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had the opportunity that was brought to me by these Fortune, large companies, and of having worked for some extraordinary people that taught me things both from an operating and a skill base, but also on the kind of the EQ level and the how to manage and how to be a great leader. I would never have gotten that if I'd struck out on my own. I didn't have those skills. And so when I think about the good fortune I've had to get to where I am, I'm very humble in knowing it's that I had mentors, like Patti said, such as, Andrea Jung, Irene Rosenfeld, Louis Camilleri, Jim Craigie. I go through the list of people who, and that was growing up. So it's no surprise that I got to where I am, and I think people that don't acknowledge the role of mentoring, and getting to where they are, that's what I got out of going to a larger company. I felt like I could leave at any moment, but I stayed at Kraft for 14 years because I never had a reason to leave, because every time I felt like I was tapping out and beginning to get rusty, a new challenge came my way. So I guess what I would say to you is, have a guiding light being that I'm going to be inspired and I'm never going to settle, and you can decide when that takes you, and you'll know in your gut when it's time to jump off and start and do your own thing. And for me, I do live my career as I figure it out as I go along, and you will too. I'm positive you will too.
Thank you.
Who else has a question? Yes, right in the middle here. Do you want to, wait for the mic. Yeah?
Hi, I'm Swetha, class of 2009 from Tepper School of Business. So I really like what you said about how leaders need to be flexible and be really comfortable with ambiguity, but I feel like we're often told to chart our career paths. I'm taking this class right now that's called Transitioning from Manager to CEO, and our final project was basically start from where you are now and chart your career path from now to age 65 when you retire. And I had the hardest time doing it because I sort of knew the beginning and the end, and I feel like a lot of us are entering industries or roles where half of the jobs that we're going to hold haven't been created yet, and we might be defining what we're doing. So what's your advice in balancing staying flexible and being comfortable with ambiguity, but at the same time working towards that CEO or whatever high-level goal we have?
I'll start, but it's interesting. It's amazing how when Liz says that was the way she was thinking about a career, I'm going, it was real similar to me. And I didn't chart my career out 10 steps ahead. And I don't know how you do that in this kind of environment when things are changing the way that they are. But I always did know, I had a pretty good view of what I really loved doing and kind of what the next step would be. I did think the next step, but not the next 10. Again, I'm not sure how you do that. And in fact, I have given advice to people that I've mentored that if you're too focused on the 10th step, you're not going to do a very good job on the job you're in. And I have seen that play over and over again with folks who are so focused on that too far ahead where they wanted to be that they weren't staying close enough to the job they were in and really performing well there. So my advice has always been, have some aspiration, absolutely. Know that you want to have a really big, meaningful role, absolutely. And know perhaps where you want to go next. Even that's probably going to change, just given how the environment and corporations and companies are having to morph and change. But be really, really, really good at the job you're in. Because if you are, and you've mastered it, and you're fabulous in it, you will move to the next role, to the next role, to the next role. But if you look too far ahead, I've seen people who just get lost in the job they're in.
Yeah, I just would say echo. I guess maybe I'd add one thing because I so agree with that. The one piece of advice I give to everyone that asks me, about the career path is that I believe that the grand plans are restrictive versus instructive. And my advice is to figure it out as you go along. The only guiding principle I've had is to insist that my life and my work had passion and purpose. Okay? And when I think about the pivotal jobs that I took, they really made no sense on paper, honestly. I mean, nobody would have said, good career move, Liz. And I can go all the way back to when I was a senior brand manager at Kraft and I was on Jell-O, which was like the flagship, I was like, I wasn't the queen of Jell-O, but let's say I was the countess of Jell-O, I was the category director, I think, of Jell-O. And then there was this little company that Kraft bought in Europe, and they closed the deal. It was Cherry's Chocolate. And they didn't even know that they bought this distributor in Elmsford. And we got the call. Irene Rosenfeld was the division manager. And she goes, apparently we own a distributorship in Elmsford. Can you go over and check it out? Okay, so everyone thought I was crazy because I was leaving the mothership, leaving Jell-O. I mean, they were Liz's office. She's gone out, and put herself out of the spotlight. And I literally went over to this little office, and there were 25 people from around the world, and there was this incredible 6-year-old Englishman who, had this vision and was importing this little tin called Altoids, and he sold about $1 million a year of it, but, he was going to keep it. And honestly, we had no systems, we had no infrastructure, nothing, and, it was the most growth I've ever had, the most fun I've ever had, and we took this Altoids thing, and in 2 years we exploded it into the thing. And honestly, people thought I was crazy to take myself out of the beaten path. The same exact thing that Cece would say about, when I went over to Avon. I mean, I was president of the beverage and grocery sector at Kraft, which was, $6 billion, and I was on track for the next promotion. So, when I went and said, I'm going to become brand president of Avon, they were like, why?
And Avon was not in great shape at that time.
No, and
Kraft was.
Kraft was, and so don't have the game plan. I think it's hilarious now for 65. Do you ladies know, can you say with certainty what you're doing next month? Because I can't. So, you know what? Go with your gut. And as Cece said, Let it unfold.
This is so refreshing. I love hearing this. And I'm going to mention something that some of you may have heard and people who know me well are tired of hearing, but I think it's a really good way to think about this. Don't think of your career as a ladder. Think of it as a jungle gym. If you're thinking about it as like a ladder, you're not going to have the peripheral vision to notice opportunities that come over here or over here. And especially today, as they say, when you don't know what the hot job is going to be tomorrow, you've got to keep yourself open, and you've got to swing to the opportunities as they come along. And I'm really struck by how many women on our Most Powerful Women list have taken lateral moves and have even taken downward moves because they want to expand their experience base, and that's what pays off in the long term. Yes? Wait one sec, and we'll get it to you.
Hi, Gia Griffith from Georgetown University, class of 2009. All of what you're saying sounds great and firmly can understand. It all gets back down to how do you do that though? So what's important? Yes, we know how to be nimble and how to think outside of the box and how to be flexible and how to build certain skills for ourselves. But part of it is also what you're saying is be seen and be known by people. So how do you do that? How do you put yourself in positions where you know someone who's going to say, you know what, you want to go check that out, or I have a great position for you, what do you think about this? So I just so happen in my experience to have had a mentor that brought me along and said, oh, this is what you want to do? Okay, I have an opportunity for you. So I understand that. But now I'm looking at, okay, been there, done that. How do I get to the next thing? Who now do I need to know? And that's, I think, a huge question for people that is not really clear.
I'll be glad to start. A couple of things pop in my mind as you asked that question, and you answered it a little bit by saying you have a great mentor. And I think mentors do play a very important role in your career, and I bet your mentor can give you the good, strong, solid advice in terms of who you need to know. You probably know who you need to know too within your company as well. And I think I'm always impressed with the people that I've worked with, whether it's already happened at Morgan Stanley or when I was at Wachovia, that the phone calls I would get from great women in the company who I didn't know, who just wanted to reach out and meet me. And they may not have been connected at all with my business, but they just wanted to meet me, and I always took the time on my calendar to make room to meet those individuals. And so I think reaching out and knowing who in the company it is you just need to network with is important. And then I think, Liz said something earlier that I so believe in, and that is having passion and purpose. And people see passion and purpose in other people. When I'm around different employees, and I'm around different teammates, or I'm around others in the organization, you can see it pretty quickly when you're looking at somebody who has that passion, who is going to be a standout. And so much of it rides on you and how you show up in your job every day with passion and purpose, using the network, really tapping into it. And when I, again, think about the wonderful people I've been able to network with because they've reached out to me, or people that I've gotten to know because I've reached out to them. And then really the mentors that you choose in your career. Because I think they're just a great resource, not only to introduce you to new ideas, new experiences, new people, but great advice and great counsel.
I guess, the only thing I would add, because I think, the mentorship piece is important. And I guess I want to pick up on one thing that Cece said about you can see the passion and the purpose. And, it's hard to say, because I've had people say, well, where do I find a mentor? Am I supposed to knock on the door and say, hi, can I be your mentor? And here's what I would say is, these things come up, as Patti said, I love the jungle gym, in the most unusual circumstances and ways. So a mentor doesn't have to be a professional person in the area that you think at the age of 20-something that you want to be in and that. I'll give you a great example. Find the networking opportunities in areas that you do feel the passion and the purpose, okay? And it doesn't have to be a business club or a business. I'll give a great example is I joined Big Brothers Big Sisters because this idea of mentoring and is so dear to me. But there was this gentleman who was just a volunteer there, and I never would have met him and I never would have spoken to him. But I was so blown away by, as Cece said, the passion and purpose of this young man. And, I don't think he was like, I want to sell cosmetics. So put yourself, find out the intersection of what you feel, not just in a business sense, but in life, passion and purpose about. Get yourself involved, and your authenticity will connect you. And then, you know what? Reach out and say to them, because what's more flattering to someone when someone says to them, I'd love to learn from you and to be taught by you. So don't be afraid to ask either. Really, because if the type of person that says no, they're not the right mentor anyway. So follow your heart, and not just in a business sense, but whatever you do, and I promise you, you'll make that connection. It'll happen.
I just have a couple of thoughts. I mean, I think curiosity is one of the most underrated qualities that successful people, that you need to be successful. I mean, certainly in my profession, in journalism, it helps. But people are really flattered when you're curious about them and when you want to learn from them. And, one thing I've learned, and I think it applies outside of journalism too, like, do not be afraid to ask the stupid question. And the most general question, like, how did we start this interview? Tell me, what's your story? I mean, you could almost ask someone that who you would like to be, it's another way of saying, will you be my mentor? What's your story? Tell me about your career. I'm curious about it. It's very flattering to the person.
Hi, my name is Emily Kudritsky, and I'm just entering the Tepper School of Business. My question is, this might apply more to small businesses, but I can see it in larger ones as well. What if the people that make the most sense to be your mentors are people that you can see yourself potentially being in competition with later on? Like, you kind of need that person to get out of the way for you to move up. Thank you.
Keep your enemies close.
I guess it's my turn. Cece's like, yeah, I've been taking the other two first. So go ahead. I got to be honest with you, I've never had that situation. And I've had a ton of people that I have learned that I've had the situation I think you do as you rise through the ranks of an organization, where I worked for somebody and then I became their peer, and then over time they worked for me. And only most people assume good intentions. And if you work with kind of, integrity and character, and you give and you learn from each other, I've never found it was that moment of like, if I succeed, you must fail. I honestly haven't found that, because I think if you approach it as, I want to do well, but I want you to do well, and we're sharing, I've never seen the dynamic where somebody that was a mentor to me, and I've had it happen a lot. Look, I'm now president of the company. Obviously, people that I had worked for have ended up working for me. And I can honestly say, they taught me a tremendous amount, and I feel so indebted to them on so many levels, and I think that they feel proud of me and invested in me. So I haven't seen that happen really that much, when you kind of lead with your heart and are totally transparent with people.
I would agree totally with that. And what strikes me is when I was trying to think through when have I seen that happen, and have I ever personally experienced it myself, and I've learned so much from folks that have been my peers or folks that I've worked with. I can think though, I was put in a pretty awkward position though. That was the situation where there was succession planning occurring at the organization I used to be with. And I was identified along with another gentleman as being a successor candidate for our boss. And we both knew it. I knew he had been identified, he knew I had been identified. But it never occurred to me to do anything but still be a great partner to him, You know, I felt even more of a kinship with him, in fact. We made a point, or I made a point after that, to get him on my calendar every month and just check in with one another to make sure we were connecting and that we weren't, because the weird thing about it is not only did we know it, all of our peers knew it. And so, so I make sure that we were connecting and not doing anything that might even appear as if we were in competition with one another. I mean, so I made it a point to even address it with him because it was a little awkward. But I never felt like we certainly were competing, but I never felt like it was a horse race. I mean, we were both about doing our jobs and respecting one another.
You know, I want to get one or two questions over here, but this is a new issue of Fortune, and it'll hit newsstands on Monday. It's the best advice I ever got. This is Bill Gates and his father, and they're in France right now. I interviewed a few people for this, and one of them is Lloyd Blankfein, the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And it was so interesting. Lloyd said the best advice he ever got was from a boss he had had years ago who said to him, as you move up the ladder, people always underestimate the impression that they leave on their employees underneath them as they move up. And you've got to constantly think about, when I was young, when I was starting out, who was it who was in my current position? And I went home at night, didn't I, and talked about them to my wife or my husband or my girlfriend or boyfriend. And right now, those people are talking about me, talking about you the same way. And you've just got to constantly remember that. So when you and your colleague that was really smart, because if you hadn't done that and established that sort of proper etiquette in the situation you were in, it could have created huge dysfunction in the organization. Yeah. A couple questions over here.
Hi, I'm Megan Conboy, MBA class of 2011 at Gozueta and Emory. And I have a question. For you guys being these amazing women leaders in business, what do you find the most challenging about being women in the business world, and what do you find the most rewarding? What do you love the most about it?
Most challenging. You know, I think I've been asked that question a lot, and so the reason I'm pausing is my answer might not be exactly what you wanted to hear. There have definitely been challenges, and there have definitely been times when I have looked around me and felt like, well, this is different because I'm a woman versus a man. But when that's happened to me, I felt like I had to address it, and I did. And so I didn't let that stand in the way. And the best example was, I won't name names, but I felt like that I was working for someone who I felt like was being tougher on me and challenging me in a pushback way more than he was my male peers. And it was becoming pretty noticeable to other people. And so, and I was feeling it, so I just went and addressed it with him. And so, and then what he said to me was an awareness for him that he was doing it. And he's a different generation, white male, and grew up in a different environment, so I don't think he knew he was doing it. And then he said something to me, so it was a learning for me. He said, I expect more out of you. And he goes, I think you're going to go further than your peers are. And so, and then I was like, oh, well, that was kind of a different perspective on that. So there, I'm not sure I'm answering your question, because my point is, there can be challenges for anybody in any business, whether a man, a woman, a person of color, whatever the circumstances are. And I think what you have to do is how you address them and deal with them. And if you let them get in your way, or if you find a way to push through them and work through them, I think you'll be more successful. And the rewarding part is doing things like this. The thing that I didn't realize until too late in my life, because I wish I had realized it earlier, was the power of women coming together and learning from one another, and experiences like this, or in companies that have women's networks and initiatives, And there was a time in my career where I didn't take advantage of that or own my power as a woman or own that I was a woman because I was trying so hard to grow up in a man's world. And then when it hit me and then I experienced how much joy and pleasure there is to not only mentor women but to be around young women or to be around peer women in networking type environments, it's just a great experience. And so my encouragement is don't wait as long as I did to have that realization of how incredibly important it is to you as you grow and develop in your careers and as people, as women, because I let too many years go by before I grabbed hold of that and owned it and have worked it.
And what was it that triggered your changing?
Honestly, it was I had the opportunity to have an executive coach. And I knew it was, I felt it. I knew it that I would, and I was like, why am I holding back from this? You know, why am I not participating? And she helped me work through that, and it was about how I grew up as a woman. So maybe it was a challenge that I didn't deal with early enough on. As I said earlier, reach those challenges and deal with them. So she helped me work through that. And once she did, the door opened, I saw it, and I dealt with the issue that was all mine, and it was just a great experience for me. But she helped me do that.
Yeah, I so much of what, I'm just going to give my take on that because so much of it resonates. I guess I feel like I had the great good fortune to have parents. There were 3 girls and 1 boy, and I had parents who, from the beginning, expected as much of, a father who was successful, who expected as much of his daughters as he did his son. Okay, and I can even tell you that in our cul-de-sac in the neighborhood, my sisters and I talk about it now, we were all friends and the families were friends, and some of the families sent just the boys to the private school and the girls' sisters went to the public school. This is true, and my parents sent all of us, because it wasn't a great public, to the school. And so I was launched in life by a very strong woman and male figure who pounded into me, your destiny is in your hands, never be a victim. Just don't be a victim. You don't like something, change it. You think something's wrong, quit complaining about it, get into the position to be able to do something about it. I mean, it was, it was such a gift, and, it's not a surprise that they raised 3 very strong-willed, women and sisters, because that was the message growing up was, don't pigeonhole. If you don't want to be pigeonholed, don't pigeonhole yourself. So check literally, and I had this reinforced by a lot of terrific people going up. So I never felt like I had, my success or failure was going to be limited or promoted by the fact that I was a woman. And I think the fact that I never let it enter into the equation made it a non-issue. I honestly do. I think that since I refused to, it is kind of very hard for other people to make it an issue as well. But the one thing I want to say, and honestly, you're going to find that whatever. I can remember being at Kraft, and I was the only one on the team that was not married, didn't have children. And so the translation of that, because you're going to find this all everywhere, was that Liz could do all these horrendous trips because the rest of the people had to go home to their family. And my point to them was, I'm about to have a child out of wedlock with whoever I can meet just to get a day off here. So, don't be, how am I ever going to meet someone to be able to have the family to not have the horrible trip? My point is that you're going to find these periods, whether you're a man, woman, person at home, single, and refuse to be a victim. And I love what Cece said, is always put it on the table. Because here's something else that I've realized when I have felt those things. You put it right on the table. There's nothing more disarming than total candor of like, what's going on here? Because this feels a little weird, just like she did with the boss. Because honestly, 9 times out of 10, it's actually good intentions. I'm not a Pollyanna. I've had the 1 out of 10 that's not. And then you dig in and you're like, I'm ready to go math. But 9 times out of 10, it is people talking past each other, not understanding the signals. I love that. I'm tougher on you because I expect more from you. So I just think the way to disarm a challenge, if you get it, and associated with being a woman in business, is to one, put it on the table, refuse to make yourself, and just refuse to make that be a stumbling block for yourself and to accept it. And the rewards are exactly what Patti and Cece said, which is, what is it? Was it Madeleine Albright that said that there's a special place in hell for women that don't mentor other women? I think it was her, and I just love that because I do really feel like I had the incredible fortune of, I've had great male mentors as well, but I have female mentors. And so one of the big rewards to me, and one thing that I really make time for, are these type of things, because someone shined that light on me and got me to where I am. And that is a joy. And I absolutely love, to see, and I think of them as, I'm sure you do, as your kids almost, succeed and thrive, and these women. I love looking out at all of you. And you know what? You're going to come in, and you're going to bring incredible new light, and you're going to improve upon the work that we've done, and you're just going to make an impact, and then you're naturally going to give back to other women.
We at Fortune started a mentoring program with the State Department in 2006, where during the month of May, we bring...
Your mic is good.
Oh, is it? We bring, it's a program with the State Department, and we bring, during the month of May, rising star women, like the best and the brightest, mostly in their 30s, women from developing countries to the United States to shadow some of our most powerful women. And Edie has done it, and Liz and Andrea Jung have done it every year since we began the program in 2006. And thank you for that. Liz, it's interesting to me that even though you said you haven't thought that much about, being a woman, you did pick two companies, Kraft and Avon, that are known for having high-level women. Even before Irene Rosenfeld was CEO of Kraft, it's always been a company where a lot of women have been division heads, and then now it has a female CEO. Was that intentional or coincidental?
It's interesting because when I talk to friends of mine in the financial world, and I say, I've never had that problem, they say, but you don't live in my world. Okay, so let me start there, which is Patti's exactly right. Was it intentional? Let me just put it this way, not consciously, but I'm sure it was important. I'm sure interviewing and seeing senior women ahead of you as a woman, of course, makes it, the conversation with Andrew was not just about the opportunity at Avon, but she was able to communicate to me a passion and a purpose that inspired her uniquely as a woman, and that was important. So I would answer your question saying more overtly in the move from Kraft to Avon, because for Andrea it's a business, but it's also truly empowering the lives of women globally, okay? And that is the DNA of the company, and she reflects that DNA. So that was more overt. And at Kraft, it's really interesting you should say that, because never consciously, but I'm sure it makes a difference. You got to put yourself in a hospitable environment, right?
Right. Any other questions over here?
Good morning. My name is Tracy. I'm from Walmart. And one of the things I noticed is that, a lot of organizations are embracing diversity in women leadership. But with that, in your roles, you take on more challenging roles in your career. How do you balance the work-life balance? Because, I see, where I'm at right now, and the amount of hours I put in and looking at my corporate jungle. I'm just trying to figure out, how do you balance, all these years? How did you balance your personal life versus your professional life?
I'll be happy to start. I don't think you ever find complete balance, and I think it ebbs and flows. I mean, you have periods of your career where you're so slammed, it's just the mission critical at whatever juncture you're in the business. It just makes it very, very hard to have that balance, and there are other periods where you can find a little bit more balance. And I also think that, and Patti and Liz may kick me, there's a point that a woman has to choose. at the most senior level what that job's going to require, and that job might require that you're not going to have the personal time that you would like to have. And I just think if you're going to be a president of a big organization or CEO, you might not be able to find all the balance, but you can find ways to get some balance.
Have you made that choice?
Well, I've done the latter. I find ways to get that balance. I know that to have my job, I have to be incredibly committed to work, and I have to put in so many hours just to get it done. But then I have found other outlets to find that balance. And I think I would strongly encourage those outlets. See my little horse scarves, and
She has 6 horses, right?
I live on a farm, and they're my escape. So I think you have to find your outlets. And then there can be different stages of your life. My kids are grown now, so it makes it a lot easier in terms of the balancing with them. But when they were growing up, I made a personal choice that there were certain things I was always going to be there for them with. And I calendared them on my calendar just like I calendared an appointment with my boss or whatever. And I just found if I put the same structure around what I want to do with my children, around what I do with work, I would make it happen. I don't think there's an easy answer of finding the balance, and I just think that you have to make trade-offs, but you have to have an escape, I believe, whether it's gardening or horses or something that you find that other place you can go that isn't always in the work.
Yeah, this is something that I feel really passionately about, and I spend time, to Cece's point, talking to women about, because I've always believed, like, oh, I can do anything, but I can't do everything. Okay, that you're a human, and there's a difference, and you have to make choices. And so I guess the first thing I decided really early on is that I was going to live a 360-degree life. That I did not want work to define me, and I am willing to make those trade-offs, because this might be a thing that that's unusual to say in a group of MBA and business women. But although I have the great privilege of having a really rewarding career that I absolutely love, my job is not the most important thing in my life. My family is, and I have the great fortune to have an amazing partner and husband. I would tell you that's number one for me, which is, we've been juggling for 20 years, and Cece said on some days, it's like MacGyver back there with the duct tape and the handoff, and everyone thinks, how do you make it work seamlessly? It's all seamless. It's just like, but I have a partner, and, I also will tell you that, so that's critical.
And you have 2 kids.
I have 2 kids. I have 2 kids that are 8 and 10. And the other thing I will tell you is that when I became a much better business person and leader when I became a mother, because it forced me to be more decisive, more level-headed. You waste a lot of time shooting the bull, putting in this time and that time, and as much as I loved my job, it made me because my priority was outside the office, it made me a much more objective business leader and business person, because and in periods of my life of great stress, it's a tremendous comfort to me, because I've always said to myself, what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, it really allows you to be a courageous leader. What's the worst thing that could happen? If my kids are healthy, the rest is gravy. So it made me a better business person. It made me a better prioritizer. But I refuse to not have a 360-degree life. And if you make it a priority, now I agree with Cece, you got to be realistic. And you got to make a commitment, and there are going to be some months and some stretches of time where work has overwhelmed the family, and then when family overwhelms the work. But if you refuse to live a one-dimensional life, you will figure it out. And you will have enough balance over a period in your life to feel fulfilled. But it's not, every day isn't going to feel good. Some days feel really lousy. I mean, look, I'll tell you, Monday, we got back from vacation. We landed in LaGuardia. My kids were like, oh, Mom, let's go here. I had to give a speech and a dinner for our global sales leaders. I'm changing in the bathroom in LaGuardia from flip-flops into a business suit. And people are coming in and out, and I'm thinking, well, gee, I hope I don't know anybody. So I get in the car and I go back. So every day is not going to feel great every week or every month, but you can do it.
And one thing I'd love to add is really not to the question, but I can't believe Liz just said, you ask yourself, what's the worst thing that could happen? I do that. I've done that in my career many times. When there's something really nasty going on that you have to deal with, and you start getting a little bit nervous about how you're going to deal with it, I go to that question. And what I always would come back to is very similar. Okay, I usually came to the worst thing that could happen is I get fired. That's not so bad. I mean, it's bad, but it's not like, you know, you're not going to die. Your children aren't going to die. I mean, so, you know, but so because sometimes you get so frozen that you don't take the action. And so I go, okay, what's the worst thing that will happen? You'll get fired. I can live with that. I mean, I don't want it. I don't want to lose my job, because financially it would be a disaster. But in the scope of life, I've done that so many times, and it's been a really useful exercise.
Cece and Liz, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you.